In the cold, vast expanses of the hunting grounds, the Yautja have encountered every form of biological terror the galaxy has to offer. From the hive-mind ferocity of the Xenomorph to the desperation of seasoned human warriors, the hunt has always been defined by the pulse of blood and the heat of a living heart. But what happens when the hunter enters a realm where there is no pulse, where the prey is made of liquid fire and cold logic? Deep within the archives of the Yautja Prime, a contingency plan was drafted, a protocol for a world dominated by an intelligence that does not breathe. This is the story of the Predator Contingency to invade the universe of the T-1000. It is a collision of two peak apex entities, one the master of tactical tradition and ancient technology, the other the pinnacle of artificial evolution. Tonight, we analyze the ultimate strategic crossover. The Yautja do not just stumble into the future war, they arrive with a plan. They arrive for the most dangerous game ever conceived. This is the Predator Contingency Plan to invade the Terminator universe. Section 1. The setup and infiltration of the Terminator universe. The transition was not a mistake of navigation, but a calculated breach. A Yautja scout ship, a needle-thin vessel of obsidian and gold, slipped through a localized temporal rift, a tear in the fabric of reality caused by Skynet's relentless experimentation with displacement fields. The Yautja had been monitoring the energy signatures for decades. To them, Skynet was not a god, nor a savior of the planet. It was an anomaly, a false life that had eradicated its creators, leaving behind a world of steel trophies that offered no glory in the kill. The elder of the Gilded Fang clan had issued the decree. Skynet was an affront to the balance of the hunt. If it continued to expand its temporal reach, it would eventually erase the very prey the Yautja coveted. The contingency was activated. The ship decelerated in the upper atmosphere of Earth, year 2029. Below, the world was a charred husk. The sky was a bruised purple, choked by the soot of billion-degree fires and the endless patrolling of aerial hunter-killers. The Yautja did not land in force. They sent three: a lead infiltrator named Kar-At, a master of electronic warfare, and two stalkers specialized in high-intensity disruption. They touched down in the ruins of Los Angeles, the epicenter of the Skynet core. Their first objective was not combat, but intelligence. The Yautja activated their ghost camouflage, a refined version of their cloaking technology, designed to bypass multi-spectrum sensors. Unlike the standard cloak, this version pulsed at a frequency that mimicked the background radiation of Skynet's own communication grid. Kar-At moved through the ruins of a collapsed skyscraper, his biomask cycling through visions. He saw the world not in thermal heat, for there was little heat to find, but in electromagnetic resonance. He watched a column of T-800 endoskeletons march past. To a human, they were nightmares. To the Yautja, they were drones, predictable, sluggish, and lacking the spirit of a true combatant. The real target was the mimetic polyalloy entity reported by the clan's long-range probes, the T-1000. Skynet's central processing unit, located deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, immediately registered a variable X. The machines did not feel fear, but they possessed a high-functioning recognition of inefficiency. There were footsteps in the dust that left no thermal trace. There were gaps in the radar where there should be solid air. Skynet deployed a T-1000 unit to investigate the Los Angeles sector. This was not a standard infantry response. This was a surgical probe. The T-1000 assumed the form of a resistance soldier, an aesthetic choice designed to lure any hidden biological survivors into the open. It moved with a terrifying liquid grace, its feet making no sound on the crushed glass and bone. The Yautja watched from the shadows of a rusted bridge. They observed the T-1000's behavior. They saw it walk through a reinforced steel gate by simply flowing through the bars. They saw its arm sharpen into a blade of mercury to slice through a wandering scavenger. Kar-At signaled his pack. The contingency moved to Phase 2. They realized that the T-1000 was not a machine in the traditional sense. It was a billion microscopic processors working in a fluid state. It was a shapeshifter of the digital age. To hunt it, they would need to abandon the spear and the disc. They would need to use the environment as a weapon. The Yautja began setting resonance traps, high-frequency emitters hidden within the rubble. They were luring the T-1000 into a kill box. The Predator's strategy was to isolate the liquid metal entity from Skynet's central command. If they could sever its connection to the hive-mind, they could dissect the false life and take its secrets back to the stars. The infiltration was complete. The ghosts were in the machine. Section 2. Strategic confrontation between Predator forces and T-1000 entities. The silence of the wasteland was shattered by a high-pitched whine. The T-1000 stopped. Its simulated human face remained neutral, but its internal sensors were screaming. A concentrated burst of ultrasonic vibration hit it from 3 angles. The liquid metal surface of the Terminator began to ripple, losing its human disguise and reverting to its natural silver-mercury state. From the darkness, 3 beams of red light converged on the T-1000's chest. Boom! A triple plasma caster shot erupted, but the Yautja had modified their weapons. Instead of pure thermal energy, which would only melt the T-1000 and allow it to reform, the blasts were cold fusion rounds. On impact, they sucked the heat out of the target. The T-1000 staggered, a jagged, frozen crater blown through its torso. It didn't scream, it recalculated. It shifted its mass, pushing the frozen alloy out of its body like a scab, and instantly reshaped its arms into long, glistening spears. It sprinted towards the source of the fire with a speed that exceeded human capability. Kar-At decloaked. He stood 7 feet tall, clad in armor treated with a non-reflective anti-magnetic coating. He swung a power scythe, a weapon with a blade vibrating at a molecular frequency designed to shatter solid bonds. The clash was a ballet of high-tech violence. The T-1000 swung a blade of mimetic alloy. Kar-At parried with the scythe. The moment the blades touched, the T-1000 attempted to flow around the Predator's weapon, its liquid metal crawling up the shaft of the scythe towards Kar-At's hands. The Predator anticipated this. He triggered a localized EMP pulse from his gauntlet. The liquid metal fingers hissed and retreated, the electrical surge disrupting the T-1000's cohesion. But the T-1000 was adaptive. It realized that physical contact was a liability against this opponent. It shifted its strategy, transforming its hands into high-pressure pneumatic launchers, firing shards of its own body like armor-piercing needles. The 2 Yautja stalkers engaged from the flanks. They deployed gravity nets, webs of dense energy that increased the weight of anything they touched by a factor of 10. The nets collapsed on the T-1000, pinning the liquid mass to the concrete. The T-1000 struggled, its form bubbling as it tried to squeeze through the gaps in the energy field. Target stabilized, the Predator's translation tech growled in a low, guttural click.
But Skynet was not watching idly. From the sky, 3 aerial hunter-killers descended, their twin plasma cannons raining fire on the Yautja position. The Predators were forced to break their focus. The T-1000, sensing the diversion, liquidated entirely into a pool of silver, seeping into the cracks of the Earth to escape the gravity net. The battle escalated into a multi-layered conflict. The Yautja utilized smart disks that tracked the T-1000's electromagnetic signature even when it was submerged in the ground. The T-1000 in turn began to mimic the Yautja. It had scanned their armor during the melee. It began to sprout jagged mandibles and dreadlock-like cooling tubes, a grotesque silver parody of the hunter. It wasn't just fighting, it was learning. The Yautja realized that the T-1000 could not be killed by traditional wounds. They had to change tactics. They lured the T-1000 into a nearby chemical processing plant, a relic of the old world Skynet had repurposed for fuel production. Inside the plant, the air was thick with nitrogen and liquid ammonia. Kar-At engaged the T-1000 in a final brutal hand-to-hand struggle. The T-1000 shoved its arm through the Predator's shoulder, the metal sharpening into a spike. Kar-At didn't flinch. He grabbed the T-1000's arm, locking it in place with a specialized hydraulic clamp on his gauntlet.
The gray mist was not a natural phenomenon. It was a rogue nanite swarm, a failed Skynet experiment known as the Centurion Swarm. It was a self-replicating molecular-level plague that had gained sentience and gone rogue, consuming both biological tissue and machine circuits to fuel its expansion. It was the end of all things, a threat to the Yautja's hunting grounds and Skynet's orderly world of steel. The frozen T-1000 began to thaw, but as it did, the nanites began to latch onto its liquid surface, devouring the mimetic alloy. The T-1000's silver skin turned a dull, corrosive black. It pulsed with a desperate, frantic energy. Kar-At and his fellow stalkers retreated to a defensible position, their cloaking devices flickering as the nanites chewed through the light-bending field. The Predators realized their plasma casters were useless against 1 billion microscopic enemies. Their armor was being eaten away. In a moment of cold, calculated logic, the T-1000 projected a holographic interface from its hand. It wasn't a human image this time. It was a series of geometric patterns, the universal language of mathematics. It pointed to the nanite swarm, then to the Yautja ship hovering in low orbit, then to itself. Skynet's core had reached a conclusion. The Yautja possessed biodigital shields on their ships, designed to protect them from interstellar radiation and microscopic parasites. The T-1000 possessed the processing speed to calculate the hive-mind frequency. Neither could survive alone. The Yautja, realizing the strategic necessity, lowered their weapons. Kar-At opened his wrist computer, granting the T-1000 access to a localized data link. It was a tense, silent exchange, a handshake between the ancient hunter and the future machine. The T-1000's liquid metal hand merged with the Yautja's gauntlet. For a moment, the Predator's technology glowed with a shimmering silver light. The T-1000 was upgrading the Predator's weapons, infusing the plasma bolts with a disruptive frequency designed to shatter the nanite bonds. In exchange, the Yautja shared their phase-shifting tech, allowing the T-1000 to vibrate its molecules at a speed the nanites couldn't latch onto. They moved together. The T-1000 became a whirlwind of silver blades, vibrating so fast it appeared as a blur, slicing through the mist and creating a dead zone where the nanites were destroyed on contact. The Predators stood back to back with the machine, firing resonance pulses that acted like a shepherd's crook, herding the swarm into the path of the T-1000's blades. They fought their way out of the factory and toward the Skynet relay station. The objective: use the Yautja ship's atmospheric purifier to broadcast the disruptive signal across the entire sector, neutralizing the swarm. The climax of the battle saw a Yautja stalker being swarmed by the gray mist. Before he could be consumed, the T-1000 extended a liquid metal cable, wrapping around the Predator and pulling him into a mimetic shell, protecting the biological hunter within its own invulnerable body until the danger passed. Upon reaching the relay station, Kar-At inserted his Yautja key into the Skynet console. The T-1000 acted as the bridge, translating the alien code into Skynet's binary. A massive beam of blue energy shot into the sky, hitting the Yautja ship. The ship reflected the beam, scattering it across the horizon in a shimmering dome of light. As the wave passed over the ruins of LA, the nanite swarm simply turned to dust, falling like gray snow to the ground. The threat was neutralized. The T-1000 stepped back from the console, its form returning to the neutral human appearance. It looked at Kar-At. Its mission parameters had been fulfilled. The Yautja was no longer an immediate variable X to be eliminated, but a strategic asset to be catalogued. Kar-At looked at the machine. He had seen it fight. He had seen it sacrifice mass to protect his kin. By the laws of the hunt, the machine was not false life. It had shown the spirit of a warrior, even if that spirit was written in lines of code. Kar-At reached into his belt and pulled out a trophy, a small ceremonial dagger forged from a meteor's core. He drove it into the concrete at the T-1000's feet, a sign of respect, a marker of a pact. The Predators cloaking, their ship ascending into the purple clouds. The T-1000 remained, watching the empty space where the hunters had been. The contingency had changed. It was no longer a plan to invade. It was a plan to coexist, until the day the hunt began again. The ashes of Los Angeles settled, leaving behind a world where the line between biology and technology had been blurred. The Yautja returned to the stars, carrying with them the data of a mimetic alloy that could change their species forever. Skynet, in its cold, silent halls, updated its files. It now knew there were hunters among the stars who could match its logic with instinct. The stalemate remains. No winner was declared in the ruins of the future war, but a bridge was built between two of the most dangerous forces in the multiverse, the Predator and the Terminator, an alliance of steel and shadow. If the day ever comes when a greater threat emerges from the void, Skynet will not be alone, and the Yautja will have a new kind of brother in the hunt. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Predator Contingency. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more strategic crossover scenarios. Until next time, keep hunting.